Reactions to Tesla's We Robot event last Thursday by industry experts, auto experts, and even people I think should know better has been puzzlement and confusion more than anything else, but I think they really misunderstand what Tesla is going for and what a big deal it's going to be, and they're forgetting about the 80-20 rule. So let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Sorry about the voice. I'm still recovering from last Thursday. I ended up actually getting a cold and stuff. You may have heard it in the recent Cybertruck full self-driving drive. If you haven't seen that yet, definitely check that out up here. But today I want to talk specifically about the Cybercab. Many auto industry experts and stock analysts have really poo-pooed the event and said it was very confusing. There weren't a lot of details. Not much happened. And even the likes of Marques Brownlee have said they're very puzzled by the event and they didn't feel like there was a lot of detail or a lot to go on. And actually, I'm a little bit sad I didn't know Marques was there, or else I would have tried to go and say hi to him because I'm a big fan. But I think that everyone is kind of forgetting what's going on here. And as I was working up the idea for this video, I actually came across Herbert Ong's post about something just like this, and then Bradford Ferguson from Rebellionaire's quote post of Herbert Ong's post, and I think those are a good place to start, so I'll start by reading those. So anyway, Herbert, in response to an auto and transportation article, posted this 2 days ago as I record this. This is quote from the article. "When you think of a cab, you think of something that's going to carry more than two people," said Jonathan Elfalon. "Making this a two-seat car was very perplexing. The market for two-door robotaxis would be very limited," said Sandeep Rao, a senior researcher at Leverage Shares, an investment management company with assets of about $1 billion, including in Tesla. Two-door vehicles account for just 2% of car sales in the US, excluding SUVs and pickups, according to data from analytics firm JD Power. Musk said he wanted to make robotaxis cheaper than mass transit to operate and predicted an operating cost of 20 cents per mile over time for the Cybercab, and keep that number in mind. Quote, "Two-seaters have been proposed for decades as commuter vehicles. They just haven't taken off," said Sam Fiorani, vice president at research firm Auto Forecast Solutions. "Tesla will eventually need to build larger robotaxis," he said, and also keep that in mind. Blake Anderson, senior investment analyst at Carson Group, a Tesla investor, said that if the Cybercab is supposed to be a lower-cost, mass-market model to widen Tesla's appeal, the two-seat design doesn't make sense. Quote, "It's probably a way that they can introduce something quick to market," he said. And now to read Bradford Ferguson's response to this. And by the way, if you don't know about Rebellionaire, they are an amazing group. They really think outside the box when it comes to financial planning, so you should definitely check them out if you're interested in that. Anyway, Bradford said, "I shouldn't name call, but these, quote, experts are morons," and I think that's great. "90% of taxi rides are for one person. They clearly don't understand the taxi market and think it's only for families of four on spring break. The answer isn't bloated, heavy Crown Victoria four-seaters. They still don't know." So this, of course, brings me back to what I said in the cold open, the 80-20 rule, or you could call it the 90-10 rule, as Bradford was saying. I can't find a statistic with exact numbers, and I looked for it, but it is on the order of 8 or 9 rides out of 10 in a taxi or Uber or the like are 1 or 2 passengers. And that's exactly what the Cybercab is designed for. It's designed for the 80 to 90% of taxi rides that involve 1 or 2 passengers. And very importantly, Tesla engineers, when I spoke to them, I spent a lot of time, really pestering these engineers and getting as much information out of them as I could, but they were very specific about the trunk of the vehicle being exactly big enough to fit 2 full-size, the largest size suitcases you can bring on an airplane, check-in, in other words, the big ones, and then 2 carry-on bags on top of that. Those will fit in the trunk of the vehicle. So clearly that was their design spec. That's like, this is how big the trunk needs to be. It needs to be able to fit this amount of stuff. And then, of course, you have the passenger room as well. And of course, there's no frunk because they've moved the penthouse, the part on top of the battery, to the front of the vehicle. And the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, no one would absolutely commit to this, but I believe that the motor is in the front. So it's front wheel drive with the, turning of the wheels and everything like that up front. So all of the mechanism is at the front of the vehicle, leaving the back completely open so that you can fit as much luggage in the back as possible. And the cabin, where we rode, and if you haven't checked out that video, definitely check that out, where me and Scott act like 2 kids in a candy store and riding around in the vehicle. I'll show a little clip of it here. But anyway, the cabin is very, very spacious, and it's got a 21-inch display, which is actually larger than the Cybertruck. So those who said it was larger were correct. I thought maybe it was the same size, but it's huge. It's designed for entertainment. There's no steering wheel, there's no pedals or anything like that. So you are just a passenger, and it's very, very comfortable in there. So again, for 80 to 90% of taxi or Uber rides that people take, we're looking at a vehicle that satisfies those requirements. But people are going to say, what about the extra 10 or 20%? What about those 1 or 2 rides out of 10 where you need to fit 4 people in the vehicle, or you need to put skis in there as well as people because you're, going to the airport to go on a ski trip or something. The Cybercab, of course, won't fit that. That's not possible with a vehicle like that. But the beauty of Tesla's system here is that's not their only vehicle. I mean, literally in that article that Herbert quoted, they were talking about how you need to build bigger vehicles in order to be able to take passengers, like multiple people, like 4 or 5 people, and or large equipment like skis or maybe multiple golf clubs or something like that. But this is completely ignoring the fact, and I think this is why Bradford said that they're morons, that Tesla already builds these vehicles. They are called Model 3s, Model Ys, Model S's, Model X's, and the Cybertruck. Elon specifically said during the event that all of these vehicles would be able to do autonomous rides or robotaxi rides. And even more importantly, the robotaxis are going to start next year in Los Angeles, or California at least, and Texas, using Tesla's current fleet, not the Cybercabs, because those won't be out until late 2026 or early 2027. So in the meantime, it's all going to be Model 3s and Model Ys, etc. Those are going to be the vehicles driving people around. So it's very obvious that for the 10 or 20% of rides that require more than 2 passengers and or a lot of luggage room, or if you want to go to Lowe's and get some, drywall or something like that, you need a 4 by 8 foot drywall or something, you can rent an autonomous Cybertruck instead, and you can have it, go to Lowe's and with you, and you can pick up the stuff and it can drive you home. And then of course, Tesla's got that crazy Cybervan thing that looks like a train out of the 1920s. It's very, very cool looking. If that ever comes to light, and Tesla says it's going to come to light, and they said the Cybertruck was going to come to light, everybody didn't believe them, but it came to light. It's actually there. I've got one sitting in the garage upstairs right now. But anyway, with that robo-van that's about 14 to 16 passengers, something along those lines, depending on the seating configuration, you've pretty much got everything covered from a 2-seater, very, very basic taxi, all the way up to a multi-passenger vehicle that can take a bunch of people on a tour, or be a replacement to a city bus, or shuttle people to airports, or whatever people need. So basically, Tesla has got everything covered with their range of vehicles. So the really important takeaway here is that the Cybercab was never designed to be 100% of the use cases that people would have. And of course, if you were a company that was only building the Cybercab and nothing else, then you are leaving off a significant fraction of the market. There's going to be people who need a bigger vehicle than that. But because Tesla makes all of these other vehicles, pretty much every other form factor you need, you don't need the Cybercab to take those roles on. It just needs to be very small, very light, very efficient, very cost effective, so that you can build it for cheap, you can build it quickly. If people want to purchase it, I don't know that they're ever going to allow individual sales. Maybe they will, but I think the idea is more of a fleet management thing. So you would buy like 10 or 100 or 1,000 or something, and you would shepherd it, as Elon Musk said. And if they are available for sub $30,000 like Tesla is promising, maybe they'll get there, maybe it'll be 35,000. But again, if the EV credit stays in existence, we're going to be talking about, even if it's like $32,000, effectively it will be somewhere around $25,000 to purchase if the EV tax credit holds up, and if they count that for these vehicles, which they should because they're electric vehicles. So at least in the US, these would be very inexpensive to purchase, and they would make a ton of money. And of course, the really important part here is that they need to be inexpensive and quick for Tesla to manufacture, but also inexpensive to purchase, in other words, to own one of these, and to maintain, and to charge up. Marques Brownlee said that he thinks that the battery is around 40 kilowatt hours based on what Tesla said about the mileage and the size of the vehicle and the weight of the vehicle and all of those kind of things. Speculation. My speculation was it was going to come in around 35 to 40 kilowatt hours. So I'm right in line with what Marques says about that. And just for comparison, the smallest Model 3, the standard range Model 3 that we have, that gets 264 miles per charge, so it's pretty good, has a 53 kilowatt hour battery. So if you imagine the Cybercab being much, much smaller, much, much lighter, having, let's say, a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack, it should be able to get approximately 250 miles per charge, especially if it's mostly doing city driving, where it can do a lot of regeneration. So if that's the case, a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack is, approximately half the size of a Model Y's battery pack, which is around 73 kilowatt hours. And that means battery wise, you can build approximately 2 of these Cybercabs per Model Y, which makes them a lot cheaper to build, right? That's the most expensive part of the car, is the battery pack. And so you reduce the amount of battery pack you need, and everything else gets a lot cheaper. One other thing that people are very confused about, and I was as well, until I got an answer from one of the Tesla designers, is what was the Cybercab made of? What was the shell made out of? It is not stainless steel. It is not magnetic. It turns out that it is carbon fiber that was shaped and then wrapped with a vinyl wrap. Now, that is absolutely not what is going to be used in the final production version. It's just a prototype. It's something that's easy to mold into various shapes. And so Tesla obviously used it for that. And so you can make, 20 or 30 of these. You're not going to make millions of these vehicles with carbon fiber. That would be ridiculous. And of course, that's exactly what the designers told me as we were chatting. So what will the Cybercab shell be made out of? Well, they specifically said no paint and no stamping. So no paint means that we're definitely not going to have traditional aluminum stamped sort of things, right? We're not going to have that. And no stamping means we won't have aluminum or stainless steel in the traditional sense. Scott Walter thinks it's plastic. I think that is a very reasonable possibility. We don't have heat issues with the engine because a motor runs much cooler than a gasoline engine. So we don't have to have metal parts. The whole thing could be plastic. It can be injection molded very, very quickly. You put the color into the plastic itself. And so you can make them all the colors of the rainbow if you want to, or the gold color, whatever they prefer. So I think that that's the odds-on favorite. The other thing that would be possible, I don't think it's likely, what would be possible would be injection molded aluminum. So something along the lines of the GigaPress, except for the external part of the car. And again, you could potentially put the color into the aluminum as you injection molded it. So that would be a really interesting possibility. Don't think it's likely. The odds-on favorite is plastic. It's very, very light. It will be strong enough for what they're doing. And remember, we're going to have some sort of giga-pressed, we'll have a single piece underneath, either a single piece for the front and the back. I think more likely a single piece for the whole thing with a structural battery pack underneath. So we'll have a substantial front and back that's a single piece, and then there will be rails. So all of this will be made in one giga-press. It'll just be like bam, and it'll make the whole, inside body of the car. But the part that connects the front and the back will just be rails where they'll drop the battery pack in, and that will be structural. And that's what will give the middle section of the vehicle its structure and rigidity. And if it has that, you can build the crashworthiness into these die-cast structures. You can build it into that so you don't have to worry if the plastic, it'll break or something like that in an accident. But that's no big deal. The actual die-cast structure, those things will actually take the brunt of the collision and deform and keep the passenger safe. So the vehicle can be very, very safe with using plastic on the outside of it. So that's the odds-on favorite and probably is what's going to happen. And again, will really reduce the weight of the car because plastic is very, very light, especially if it's a thin plastic. So that seems like a good plan with kind of injection molded aluminum as a distant second possibility. Definitely not going to be stainless steel. So sorry, I was wrong about that. And it's definitely not going to be traditional painted aluminum. And then the last very, very important part of this that people are not talking about enough. And I gave big props to the Tesla AI team. I got a chance to talk to several of them during the event. So it was wonderful seeing all of you guys. I really appreciate it. I did ask about interviews, but they are forbidden from doing YouTube or X interviews. So that's not going to be happening anytime soon. But we did have a chat about it. And I said that one of the things that impressed me the most about Tesla's, We Robot event was the uneventfulness of it. So that's kind of a weird thing to think about, but they're making this big spectacle. And then it was kind of boring in the sense that these cars were just driving around. We had Optimi robots walking around. All of this stuff was very normal, very natural. And as far as I know, there were no glitches. Everything just ran and it ran perfectly. I'm going to put Optimus aside. I'm going to dedicate an entire video just to talking about that and how Optimus is, again, it's one of those things where people were like not all that impressed. And yes, they were definitely teleoperated. I talked to people, they said that's what it was, but it was still very, very impressive. And I think I know why it was teleoperated. But anyway, I'm going to put that aside for another video, so definitely subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. But specifically the vehicles, the Model Ys and the Cybercabs that were driving around. So I believe there were 20 Cybercabs and 40 Model Ys. So 60 vehicles were making a loop around. And yeah, they were only going 10 or 15 miles an hour, but there were people wandering around all over the place, right? They're walking across the street in front of the vehicles. They're all over the place. The vehicles would have to pass each other as one would stop to let people on and off. So they were performing standard taxi duties, and it was completely uneventful because the software is so freaking good. I'm driving it in my Cybertruck right now, driving it on our Model Y, driving it in our Model 3. All of these things work fantastically. It is just amazing how good this software is. And of course, if you're going to build a car with no steering wheel and no brake pedal and no accelerator pedal, it has got to be pretty darn well near perfect. And that's the kind of thing the Tesla AI team is working on. And that's what they really accomplished. So the non-eventfulness of the event was actually a huge positive for Tesla. If there had been any kind of accident or one car had bumped into another, right? Again, they're going slow, but if it had been like that and it crunched the front of the car, people would have had video of that. It would have been a huge brouhaha. This was a live demo. Remember, we had the Optimi out there, live demo. We had these vehicles out driving around, live demo. All of this stuff is just asking for things to go wrong. Every time I do a live demo, something goes wrong. It's terrible and it's utterly terrifying. And again, the Tesla AI team, when I talked to them and I asked them, I said, you guys are, stressed until this event ends. And they were like, absolutely. So I hope that they had a really good weekend and had a chance to just take a breath and relax, because it must have been super stressful having all that stuff going on. But they looked very relaxed, very confident, and the vehicles did perfectly. They were amazing. They drove for hours. I caught one of the very last rides. I had to wait in line forever to get on the Cybercab. So I caught one of the very last rides, and it was still driving beautifully, just tooling around, no problem at all. So it was handling it fantastically. So the fact that we didn't have any kind of big deal happen, any kind of newsworthy event or, boo-boo happen during the event is in itself a gigantic statement about how good Tesla is at what they're doing. This is something that no other company would be willing to do. Absolutely not. No way that they would do that. Not Mobileye, not Waymo. Nobody is going to be willing to put a bunch of cars into a loop and have them have to deal with all of the chaos that was around that whole situation and drive people around. So this was a big statement. The fact that Tesla was willing to do it and the fact that it went off so well were hugely important aspects of the event. So was the event as exciting as I thought? Did we see a flying roadster or anything like that? No, we did not. So a lot of that stuff didn't happen, and it wasn't quite as, energetically fun as I was expecting, primarily because I didn't get in the VIP section. So we ended up watching Elon and Franz and everybody on a screen as if we were at home. So I was like, well, that's pretty sucky. So anyway, there was things that were not fantastic about it, but I think it's very important to understand that it was not puzzling. It was not confusing. I understood exactly what Tesla was going for. They were building a car for 80% of the vehicle usage for taxis. The other 20% can be handled by the other vehicles that Tesla already sells and has multiple millions of them on the road right now. So why build a car that replicates what those cars are doing? Why not build a car that's entirely different? And then of course you've got the van, and then of course you've got the Optimi, and then of course you've got the fact that the AI worked fantastically in the vehicles. So all of that stuff was amazing. Did Elon and Tesla overhype it a little bit? Yeah, they absolutely did. It was not quite as good as I expected it to be, but was it puzzling or confusing at all? Absolutely not. Tesla said what they were going to do. They did it and they showed it off, and that was really impressive. All right, so those are my thoughts on the subject. Let me know what you think in the comments, and while you're down there, if you don't mind liking and subscribing, I would love to get to 100,000 subscribers before my birthday in late January. Help me do that. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.